Oh, oh, this is straight
Interesting.
business, bro. Some logic already off the
Alright.
bat. Some logic.
And we see the air tracing slash kind of floating.
Yeah. The alignments could use a little bit more work in some. Ooh. I wish he hit it harder there.
It was a cool concept for sure.
Yeah. Lots of cool concepts.
When you a boss, don't take a loss, count up a check. Soul plate, never late, go on dates. When you get up, they hate. Diamonds, they drip like a lake. Ali a 10, kick flip an 8.
Thumb placement or thumb direction there.
Yeah. Interesting transition.
Yeah, like I was like, how do you get it to that tut? I think it worked.
It did. Okay.
I got standards, suck on my nuts like planners. Ooh, yeah, my bitch a dancer. Hop on a dick like a prancer. Ooh,
Oh, that's some
Cool.
nice.
Very cool.
I need to see more musicality.
you talk outlandish.
Yeah.
I need to see more
Got a new mansion, new route.
matching
This-
of the vibe.
Diamonds is dancing.
Yeah, this is such a commanding song, and I
It
feel like
is.
we're stuck in this pace.
We're going through the motions.
Yes.
Lingering finger there on the digit.
No standard. Blow outlandish. When Virgo on the trickle, you rappers are banished. My bitch just landed. Not a look at English, she speaks Spanish.
I got standards.
Oh, Victor. Oh my god. Okay. So
Very cool background.
and I want to talk about this because I feel like this has been a more common lately. I am guilty of this myself. And that's because you're looking at the camera. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Scott, when we're looking at the camera, we are saying, I hope my execution is perfect. Like, I'm looking for good execution, right?
Yep.
That you're tunneling on your execution. You're tunneling on it. You're not actually locked in. Like, and then so there's a couple things that happen, right? You lose that intimacy with the audience. You lose that intimacy because eye contact is like the most intimate thing that you could do with the audience, is that eye contact. It's
Agreed.
another level of showmanship, right?
Yes.
And yeah, you're too stuck in the tech for too long, and there isn't risks in the musicality. You right? I had a monitor set up. Yeah, no, dude, I totally get it. I have a problem with this myself. I mean, even till today, like, getting that perfect thing, but that is the thing that you sacrifice, right? And you lose that rawness. You lose that rawness in the feeling, and that just plays into the whole performance. It really, in the end, it really depends on your goal.
Yes.
But like, I would really suggest, right, like, throwing shows, not looking to the camera here and there, because then that's your actual execution. That's your actual execution. Because in a comp, right, you got one shot and like you don't got the camera there, so it's like I would practice just not looking at just raw record, and it's just you in the no screen, no.
Right.
Go ahead, Jacob.
I was gonna say, I think there's a level of being uncomfortable with the framing of your show and not being accustomed to the camera that you're throwing to, right? Like, you're a bit worried about, am I out of frame? Am I in frame? Like, what is being lost in my show right now because I'm out of frame? And that, like, when you have a monitor or something to look at, or your phone screen facing back at you to look at while you're gloving, it's almost like it's really difficult not to look. Like, you're like, oh fuck, I'm gonna take a glance like real quick at the playback just to make sure I'm still in frame, and then you kind of get lost in your own gloving because you're trying to keep it within that frame and keep it at a certain level of execution, like Kevin was saying. But and I agree, don't try not to look at the camera as much as you can, but really, in my head, and this is the way that I throw shows to cameras, and I've been I've been gloving to cameras for forever, being in the East Coast and everything being in the West Coast. And I'm sure Kevin can agree with this in his position as well. Like, it was difficult for us to always be hanging out with people that were gloving, and so you end up being in front of the camera a lot. But I think treating that camera lens as an individual, as a person that you're performing for, and getting into that mindset of like, okay, this camera lens is two eyes in front of me, like it's putting you into that mindset of like, okay, I'm at a festival and I'm giving a show to someone who's watching me versus I am performing for a camera.
Absolutely. And this is probably just because, we're at the vertical, right? So
Yeah,
can't really
it's tough.
It's tough, man. There's a part here. Let me see if I can find it. Was that initial drop? There's a big clue at the drop. I want you to pay attention to the drop. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Okay, right there. Boom, that's it. You notice something? 029. All right, at 029 to 031. Right, one more time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, you see how the background? You see the background is hitting that.
Yeah, it's flickering.
It's flickering. That's musicality.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at what Sike is doing. He's not flickering. He's in
we're stuck in that. We're stuck in that cluster.
That should be texture. Like,
yeah, it's not so much that the position he's in is bad or like it's something he should stray away from, but you're right that kind of texture of like, we're somewhere like this, right? And even if you're like woo, and then it comes back together, like that. Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's what separates good from great.
Yes.
It's making those riskier hits, that texture. I mean, the light in the background is doing it. You know what I'm saying? Like, why aren't you? Right? Yeah. That's a big clue. We're like visualizers, you know what I mean? Like glovers, we're like visualizers, right? We have lights, we make patterns and shapes. So getting out of the mind frame of like just like textures, not textures, getting out of just like tech positions, but like making your tech positions visualizers. And I think because Sike is he's relatively newer, right, compared to us.
Okay.
I think that there's a big gap there in terms of like the generation. Like people like within our like generation of glovers, like you'll see more of that, right? I mean, granted, like maybe not all the time. It was, I think that like majority of people were like doing like a lot of wave tuts. This is kind of like before clusters, right? So you got to see a little bit more of that visualizer effect. Right, I mean, OGs kind of basically have this. Guys like on AO, pretty much it's all finger rolls, so you get more of that visualizer effect. But then nowadays, there's almost too much of a focus on the connection in the form and not the actual illusion of the light. The illusion of the light is a big. It's lost. It has been lost in translation since COVID. I think, like mostly since COVID from the newer gen, and that's totally. I mean, that's totally okay. That's just. That's just like the story of the community of where we are, right? How long OGs have been in the scene and whatnot. But if you can replicate or even like, replicate that illusion of like the visualizer or of the lights, the illusion into what you have now, then you get closer to the source of gloving. The source of what gloving is about. That is the disconnect between old gen and new gen. Because when you think about gloving, what it was for, it was to mess people up. It was to give them a show. It was to mess up everything, Match the music. That, like, when newer glovers, it's all about technique. It's all about the technique. But then, like, if you can match more of that show, like that light show aspect with your tech, then you have the best of both worlds. Then you're closer to the source of gloving, right? Um,
And I want to throw this tip out there for anybody who's listening. I think it applies to you as well, Scott. So, and this is something that I've taught a lot of people. When you're thinking about textures in gloving, I want you to try and relate it more to things in nature and how things in nature move based on the sounds that they're making, and then trying to implement that kind of movement, it how it's moving or the sound that it's making, or those combined, putting that movement into your own concepts can change and add a whole new layer to the things you're doing, right? Like if I have if I have a floor and I have a leaf floating around in the wind and it's coming down and then it lands right, that's a texture that I'm adding to the move rather than like my hand just like moving around and like coming
yeah,
down.
right.
And thinking about those things in nature, or like, Kevin used to have this
The
concept
jungle
that we
gym.
talked about, the jungle gym, and it's this little monkey who's jumping around and he's moving all around on these bars, right? We're taking these textures and these ideas from things that are in nature, and I think, when I see that movement, I think about that bass that's hitting, right? I'm thinking of like bee or like hummingbird wings
Yeah, like
that are
bzzz, yeah,
flapping, like right, and if it,
yeah,
and then you're coming back
right.
together, like that kind of thought process can help you reach those conclusions, when even when you're not thinking about, like, you said you're like, oh, I didn't think of executing the move in that way. And I think having that kind of bridge from the real world to the concepts that you're doing can help open your creativity as far as what is and what isn't possible.
It makes it more visually appealing as well. In my opinion, it kind of like sparks curiosity, or like creativity rather, to the audience, right? Because you're very binary right now, right, Scott? With your connections, very binary. Like most of it makes a lot of sense, but then like you make it come to life. That's what makes your moves come to life. You could do that swing of the leaf back and forth with your tech forms, right? It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be that form. It could be like, I don't know, bro, like a clock, bro, or like a clock face or something, and like have that. And it's an entirely different like thing now. Whether or not the audience gets it, you're putting a different filter in your brain, and it adds more how do you say, illusion to your moves. Totally makes sense. I do laser production. Oh, okay, and getting the lasers to beat match is a lot easier. I think the difficulty of the moves is something I still have to think about, and I might be tunneling. I actually, I feel like I feel like you gotta dumb down your moves, bro. I
There's a
feel
lot going on.
there's a lot of like you're straight into business. And I'm just gonna head on over to the clip right now. It's like I mean, look at this, bro. Like you're starting the show like in a
Already in an
tech
angle.
form, dude. Right? You
Yeah.
gotta play with your space. You gotta play with your space, play with more of the audience's peripherals, right? But it's very you're more focused on the technical stuff here, and for the most part, this is like the height. This is the height of your gloving right now, right? This is like the climax, at least pretty close to the level of difficulty that you have probably later on in the show, that there's no ride, right? You're maintaining this level of complexity throughout the entire of your show. Like right here, this section is not that much different than this, right? And then so like as an audience, it's not suspenseful. It's not. I'm kind of just going. I'm looking at it, right? You're doing the moves, but you're not building on the moves. Like look at that. We're at a cluster form. We're at a cluster form. 29 seconds is high level of tech here, right? So it's like, yeah, just coming up with an easy a level one. Like, what does this look like?
So one thing that I just did, and I feel like this is a beneficial thing to do for your own shows for anyone who's recording and they want to like think about what they're not doing in their show. So I just rewatched the whole show at 2 times speed, and the only thing that I had in my head was, do I sing a finger roll, and do I see liquid? And the answer to that question is no. There was
Oh,
zero.
really?
Yes. He had one or two like whip kind of transitions
Yeah.
towards the end of the show, but other than that, there was zero liquid and there were zero finger rolls. And I don't want to be like the older Glover who's like harping on not having finger rolls in a show, because I think everyone has their own preference about what they do and don't want to use in a show. But I think part of that like overloading of tech sequences back to back and like going from form to form with different digits and stuff, it needs to be broken apart by that liquid and by those finger rolls to give that kind of up and down, that push and pull, that suspense, and creating that feeling of like, oh, what's next?
Yes, yes, yes. And like, you know, like I'm like looking at it right now, and like on paper, everything that you're doing, Scott, is high value, but
Yes.
because all of it is high value, it's low value.
Yep.
That's exactly what's happening. It's all high value that there's no contrast in what's actually high value, right? So it's like you have the tools, bro. Like I'm like looking at everything. I'm like, okay, that like you do this one like tut, like where is it? It's like yeah, this like this section right here, like 1 minute 3 seconds. It's like,
Like
bro,
transitional tut.
like the whole platforming like depth like type of movement is like all like high level, but when you're doing that every like or at least things of that nature every moment of every time, you lose the value and there's not a level of surprise, right? There's not a level of surprise. You need you need filler moves, bro. One of the very few. Oh, this section right here at like 129, like yeah, 129. This tut like to that like platform, that's crazy, bro. But like you have nothing to like really I mean, that's the highlight. It's just highlight after highlight after highlight. How do you make things a highlight, bro? You need the filler.
Yeah.
What up, Lotus? Okay, that should be a pretty easy fix. I just need to chill a little bit. Yeah, and you need to find, how do I say? It's because you're vertical as well, you know, you don't really get to, there's a level of depth that you're just not able to do when you're in the vertical, so it's, you know, I can't really fault you for that. But you need to find interesting filler moves. You can pause in a form, and Jacob, you mind like showcasing this? Like go into like a complex form, like any
Okay.
complex form, like a form, yeah, and then like just move it as a filler, like to use that as a filler to let it breathe. Yes, just anything like that. You see how he's changing his angles? He's like rotating it around and he's breathing. Like that is filler as well. So when I say filler, it doesn't mean to be completely just liquid filler, like
Correct.
whip filler. You could just let the form breathe and like
Yes.
use your space. If you, because not only that, not only is it like is it already just high value, but you're kind of teasing it as well. You know, you're teasing the form. You're letting the audience be like, okay, what is actually happening? You give the audience time to breathe.
Yeah. Yeah, because and I think that there's definitely like this this almost like if someone is watching the show and they don't entirely understand every move that you're doing, if they're not able to then frame by frame your video, they're losing half of the concepts that you're doing because you're going at such a steady pace through them all. And right, and you want like I know Kevin talked about Mega Sloth earlier and like his kind of
We're just
you
swapping.
come on, I go off. Yeah. Um, he has this very like melodical way of like putting stuff in front of the viewer and making it like understandable, even if it's super complex, both based on his speed control and also based on his presentation. And I think that if you also had like this dichotomy of fast and super slow and then medium speed added to those tech forms, along with like what Kevin was saying about letting it breathe, you're almost like opening up the viewer's ability to digest the moves that you're doing and then see how cool they are, right? Because some of the moves me and Kevin saw, some of the transitions were really awesome, but it's like you get a glimpse of it, and then as soon as you realize it happened, we're like four more moves ahead already.
Yeah, this brings me to someone had shared it actually pretty recently. Remember the puppet list of infinite theories? You remember that document? Okay, there's an image on there, and I totally forgot about this concept. But it's I think it just plays in my subconscious. But imagine everything on the lens, okay, is like 1 mile per hour, and then like everything on the side is like 15 miles per hour. Okay, so like try implementing that type of like thought process within your show, because if I'm fast here but then like when I'm going closer I give them the form and I give them time to breathe. Like you could be in your connection and then but like when you're closer you give them time to breathe, you let them see the form, right? And it becomes really fun because like sometimes you'll get into like you'll pause, right, and then you'll come closer, you'll get into forms that like you never really like thought about before because you're closer and you're slower, you're paused, right? I think that would be a really good fix actually, like with your show right now, because it's just all gas, bro. Like look at this, like it's all gas. Like if you just paused, went closer, let them appreciate, good. Get into this thing right now, pause, go closer, let them appreciate, then bro, like that already, that alone, and you don't even have to do anything. That you don't even
Yeah.
have to do anything, bro, and it makes it high value, you know? But I mean, pretty much. I mean, like I'm gonna go ahead and look at the logic real quick. Because I yeah, the logic. Okay, some
There's
moves.
definitely some
There's a
missteps.
lot of missteps actually. Like, uh,
I think there's a lot of like floating
it's
between. It's like the connections that I think should be connected are not.
this video was 5 months ago, and I remember watching Sike's video, a more recent one, and he's gotten a lot better with the floating. So I know,
Sweet.
yeah,
Okay.
I know he's gotten a lot with the floating. Like right here,
Awesome.
like when we're stuck in that. Look at this. Like you're not getting that stick, that stick in your movement right here. Maybe because of the form, actually, because you land here and then now it looks like a misalignment sometimes. Like here you're doing the isolation right here. From look at this like 3 fingers in the front, right? You're doing the isolation, but then like you do it in like a you're like moving your hand in the diagonal before your thumb goes into the isolation. You're moving too many parts at the same time.
Yeah.
See, and then you meant to do a horizontal angle, so you're moving your whole hand before your thumb isolation. You're moving
So, and what I
fast.
call this is like committing to concepts, right? Committing to forms. And that kind of plays hand in hand with what we were just talking about letting some things breathe. But it's also about like if you aren't committing to a certain hand form, then it's almost like you're just letting that concept fly by. And there was a Glover named Slayer. Some people may remember him.
Holy crap!
Great Glover, great guy.
Wow.
Um, and me and him worked on this a lot together because he felt that he had this issue of like I'm not committing to my concepts, and I do like a partial concept or whatever, and then I'm immediately like I'm breaking it away and going to something else. And you don't have that problem as far as like breaking away and like resetting to like whips or anything, but I think you do have that problem in the sense of if you're in an angle like this, which is not a normal angle for most people to hit, I want to see you play with that, move around it, and kind of like change
Yeah.
what you're doing with it while still holding this angle, rather than the second you get here, like now you're doing this full down and then everything's changing.
Yeah, just let the form breathe. Yeah, just play with the angle, right? And yeah, he's constantly changing angles, right? But like it's you know, it's really
It's not bad.
It's not bad.
He's
It's high
he's
level.
executing a lot of it really well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's high. It's high level, but how you make it better? You just play with the. You show us the tools. Like in every form, there's a tool,
Yes.
right? But then you're changing. What you're doing is you're changing the tool. You're always changing the tool, and so that will bring another level of like creativity in your show. You're gonna come up with a lot more newer moves. Like you could have like this. This is probably my favorite part of the show right here. Like you go into like that tut that just comes. That
it's
tut.
super cool.
Like if you just use your space, bro. Like if you like got into that, it's illusion, right? It's speed illusion. It's space illusion. Like if you like went into like a tut and you like swiped across the lens, like if you used your space, like in that tech form, right? If in that tech form, just go and use that space. Now you breathe. Go into your tech. Use that space. Breathe, right? I gotta give a shout out to my boy Dynamics. He does like platforming king tuts, like pretty similarly to how you do it. But what I want to see is just more that emphasis towards the camera, and then it's just yeah, you go up like 2 levels, bro. 2 levels if you just did that even closer. Here, there's a lingering finger. Here, lingering finger in the ring. Or is that the ring? Or pinky? I think that's that's a ring.
Kind of relate to this laser production. They often don't let us pop off lasers until the headliner, so there's a bigger pop. Yeah, no, it's great that you have something to like relate it to as far as the basis goes, and I think that relation is a perfect one to make.
And I'm pretty sure, like, yeah, Sike like does like a little bit of like visual, like graphic production, right? Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but like your light show is like a video clip with no cuts. No cuts. Conceptually, there needs to be more cuts.
Right.
But yeah, I mean that's you went to school for VFX. Yeah. You're like I don't know, you're trying to composite like an effect like of a smoke, and there's like no cuts, bro. So one long timeline, one long video clip conceptually. Cut it, bro. Cut it. Big shout outs to all current Gloving Academy Patreon subscribers. Thank you so much for all the support. Seriously, guys. The Patreon's got weekly educational and never before seen content. So if you want to take your gloving to the next level and learn from me, come join the Gloving Academy Patreon.